Cam Sutton suspended for 8 games. That's next on Bleav in Steelers. Today's episode of the Bleav in Steelers show is brought to you by BetOnline.ag. Wimbledon is in full swing. Training camp starts for football later this month. You got preseason action getting underway in August. If you want to place a bet on baseball, MMA, any of the action that is going on, got the Paris Olympics as well coming up. BetOnline.ag is the place to do it. Use our promo code Bleav for your 50% bet credit on your first deposit up to $250. Bet online. The game starts here. Welcome into the Bleav in Steelers show. My name is Mark Bergin. Flying solo, quick reaction to Cam Sutton, the Steelers cornerback, getting suspended for 8 games. Here are my thoughts. You know Dante Jackson is going to be opposite Joey Porter Jr. to start the 2024 season. Maybe Corey Trice Jr. gets into the mix. The question I have for the Steelers is this. Who is your nickel back corner? Who is your slot cornerback when you put 5 DBs on the field? How do you solve that problem early on in the season, considering that Cam Sutton now has this 8-game suspension? He'll be eligible to return on October 29th. That is after the Giants game. The Steelers have a bye week in week 9, meaning the soonest Cam Sutton will be allowed to come back is week 10 against the Washington Commanders. Then week 11, you've got the Ravens in your first division matchup of the 2024 season. But I've got a lot of questions with this. Sutton is 29 years old, and he entered a pretrial diversion program to resolve a domestic violence case in Florida, in Hillsborough County, Florida, Tampa, Florida specifically. And he finally turned himself in after being wanted for weeks by authorities in Florida. And the NFL found that there was credence in this investigation. They probably worked with the Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office in Florida to determine that an 8-game suspension was coming. When the Steelers signed Cam Sutton this offseason, they had to figure a suspension of some sort was coming, whether that was 4 games, 6 games. We now know it's going to be 8 games. And so, again, we find out that a warrant was issued for Sutton's arrest on March the 7th in Florida after police responded to a house call where allegedly he battered a woman before leaving the scene. So again, he was wanted for weeks before finally turning himself in. But when you talk about Cam Sutton on the field, his level of play, he played his best football with the Pittsburgh Steelers in that 2022 season where he goes out and gets a 3-year, $33 million deal with the Detroit Lions. The stuff happens off the field, and the Lions say, hey, we're going to cut our ties. And he signs a 1-year contract for around $1 million with the Steelers. So if there's anything else off the field, the Steelers financially don't have a lot tied to Cam Sutton. Hopefully he can put this issue behind him and then focus on getting back to being a very good player on the field, and to where he's probably going to make more money beyond this season than he would this current season. But this is what happens when off the field incidents happen. And so on the field, the Steelers are going to have to figure out what they're going to do during these 8 games that Cam Sutton is unavailable, because he's demonstrated the ability to play both inside and outside. And what I mean by that is, again, Joey Porter Jr. is your number 1 corner. He's going to be the guy you put up against another team's best receiver. Dante Jackson, the guy you acquire from the Carolina Panthers in the Deontay Johnson trade. Jackson is likely to line up opposite Joey Porter Jr. Maybe Corey Trice Jr., who missed his entire rookie year, can get into the mix there as well. But you look at the Steelers roster right now, and it's who's going to be in the slot for those first 8 games. It's going to name some corners on the roster, and maybe it's one of these players. Anthony Averett, Kalen Barnes, Beanie Bishop Jr., Thomas Graham Jr., Darius Rush, Josiah Scott, Ryan Watts. I mentioned Corey Trice Jr. as well. Do the Steelers say, hey, let's see how free agency goes when other teams make cuts during training camp and preseason? Is there a guy you could go get who's not currently on the market? Certainly, I think you could go get a Stephon Gilmore or Patrick Peterson, but likely not for the price that you want to pay if you're the Steelers. You don't want to pay a premium for past performance from veteran players who have played at the highest level. But you don't really need outside corners right now. You need someone who can play in the nickelback, in the slot, who can play inside. Cam Sutton can do that. Mike Hilton could do that several years back. And you're going to be in a nickel formation with 5 DBs on the field as more and more teams are pass happy in the NFL in 2024 and beyond. 3 receiver sets, 4 receiver sets, 5 receiver sets where you've got your nickel and dime packages out on the field. You need the DBs to defend. I mentioned the first division game in week 11 against Baltimore because I look at the teams in the division that have good receiving cores. Zay Flowers, Mark Andrews, Isaiah Likely in Baltimore. And I know 2 of those guys are tight ends, but then I look at Cincinnati, the 2-headed monster of Jamar Chase, T. Higgins. Cleveland, I know that it's just Amari Cooper, but Amari Cooper has been as consistent of a high-level receiver as we've seen in this league for years now. So how you match up against those teams, you're going to need the DBs to go opposite them. And you say, well, Mark, isn't that Joey Porter Jr.'s job? It is. I hate to even put this out there. What if there's injury? You need depth at this position. And like right now, the 3 biggest storylines I have for the Steelers. The quarterback battle, it's going to be Russell Wilson week 1. I think the way more intriguing conversation is who's your quarterback come season's end. That's number 1. Number 2 is who's receiver 2 behind George Pickens. And as it stands right now, I think Pat Freiermuth's going to be that guy in a contract season who helps fill some of those receiving needs, even though he's technically a tight end. So that's number 2. Then number 3, what's your cornerback depth look like? Because beyond Joey Porter Jr., Dante Jackson, does that translate over from the NFC? The Steelers were pumped to have Patrick Peterson a year ago, but he had played in the NFC for the vast majority of his career before coming to Pittsburgh. And that late in his career, when you're paying him north of $7 million, it's a great teacher, great veteran presence, couldn't play on the outside last year. Got consistently beat on the outside last year. So, yeah, you could try to bring him back, but for what price? And that's the questions that I have is, what's your cornerback depth look like? When Cam Sutton comes back, that helps address that issue. But for the time being, he's going to be suspended for 8 games for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Spent his first 6 years coming out of the University of Tennessee in Pittsburgh. That 2022 season I mentioned, 3 interceptions, and that was his final year in Pittsburgh. And so he's back now. And Cam Sutton's a guy I've watched since I lived in Knoxville, 2015 through 2017. That Josh Dobbs, Alvin Kamara, they were the Vols offense. And then on defense, they had Derek Barnett, who's been a good edge rusher in Philly for several years now, and then Cam Sutton. So this is a player I've been familiar with for a long time. And he's played well in Pittsburgh, and hopefully he can get back on track. And then beyond the season, if this is his last season in Pittsburgh again and he tests free agency, hopefully he can get right and prove that he's worth more than what he is going to be making this year for the Steelers. And I think that's showcased by that 3-year, $33 million deal with the Lions. But off the field, you got to stay out of trouble. You got to stay out of trouble. So we'll see how all this shakes out. Again, week 10 is the earliest he will return. Something I also want to mention too, Joe Burrow floated this idea of a second bye week. And the Bengals QB makes this suggestion coming on the idea that the NFL is going to be moving to an 18-game regular season. So a second bye week, I think, makes all the sense in the world for a lot of reasons. But to keep players healthy, something I want to ask Ike Taylor about here on the show when we get him back here on Bleav in Steelers is what it takes for a player to make sure that he can be healthy enough to suit up week in and week out, to make sure he is ready to go, to make sure that he's healthy, to make sure he has mobility, that he feels strong, everything that goes into the preparation of being ready on Sunday. So when the league moves to an 18-game regular season, because it used to be 16 games, now it's 17 games, it's a money play by the owners and the players because you can draw a TV rating. A guy we have on the show here in the past multiple times, Lee Steinberg. He is Patrick Mahomes' agent. He is the guy that Jerry Maguire is based off of. He tells us all the time when he comes on this show of the obsession that this country has with the NFL. So what am I talking about? 93 of the top 100 watched broadcasts in 2023 were the NFL, not just football, the NFL. So I think it's going to move to an 18-game regular season. How do you go about doing that while putting a high-quality product on the field at a second bye week? So here's a couple of other things that I think that you could do if you make this second bye week happen, because now you went from 4 preseason games to 3 preseason games in a 17-game regular season. You take away one of the other preseason games because no one really cares about preseason. I mean, you care about your own team, but on a nationwide basis, adding another week of the regular season, again, it's that TV revenue that you can generate. So the 18-game season is going to happen. I've always said that the Thursday night game, the two teams should have a bye week going in. If you have a second bye week for every single team, any team playing on Thursday night football, you'd be able to better accommodate that. Give them a bye week to give guys longer to get ready instead of a shortened week, less preparation, less game plan, fewer star players playing on Thursday night. So that's one thing I think you could accomplish with 2 bye weeks is the teams playing on Thursday night should have a bye week going in. Find a way to figure that out. You get a higher quality product on Thursday night because we still watch, still draws high ratings, but it's not the same quality football that you see on Sundays and on Monday night. So that'd be the one thing I would do. But then secondly, when the NFL moves to 18-game regular season, are they going after Labor Day? Labor Day is usually the weekend college football opens, and it's the exclusive start to college football. And I'm not talking college football, the week 0 football gurus I watch, but I'm talking week 1 of the regular season when things get going for all of the teams throughout the country in the college football landscape. Will the NFL go after that opening weekend, that first weekend in September, Labor Day weekend? And the reason I asked that question is because the NFL's already gone after Christmas Day, which used to be exclusively for the NBA. The NFL is going for the jugular. They're going for it all. And they're competing against other sports and other leagues. Would the NFL try to tap into that Labor Day weekend by starting the regular season a week earlier than the league normally does? Again, that Labor Day weekend is usually exclusively for college football. You have games all day Saturday. Usually there's a Sunday game of some sort, and then there's usually that Monday night, that primetime game. There's usually a big-time matchup in college football where the NFL say, we're going for that. Used to be yours, college football exclusively. We're going for that now with an 18-game regular season. Or do they say, hey, we'll start the weekend after Labor Day and then just bump the regular season back by a week? But I think you potentially go for the Labor Day weekend. You go after college football. Because college football is in that top 100 watched broadcasts every year. But again, 93 of the top 100 watched broadcasts in 2023 were the NFL. That number goes up every single year. Curious to see if it does it again. Maybe it doesn't this coming year because you've got the Paris Olympics. I think there's going to be worldwide fascination with the Summer Olympics in Paris. But the country's obsession with the NFL is evident year in and year out. When the league moves to an 18-game regular season, and I'm not saying if, I am saying when, do you start the season Labor Day weekend or do you bump it back? I'm going to be very curious. But I like Joe Burrow's idea of having 2 bye weeks. I think that is fair to the players. My name is Mark Bergin. I've gone on long enough. If you enjoyed this episode on Apple and Spotify, leave Bleav in Steelers a 5-star review. If you're watching on YouTube, do me a favor. Hit that subscribe button. Tell a friend to tell a friend to tell a friend. Hope all of you have a great rest of your weeks. I will be back, supposed to be Thursday, with Ike Taylor. So curious to get his thoughts, see how his 4th of July holiday weekend went, to catch up with him to see how he's been doing. Again, thank you so much for tuning in and listening. My name is Mark Bergin. I'll see you next time. Until then, take care and so long, everybody.